Welcome to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast, bringing you real, practical, brain-based strategies to cultivate a life and business full of freedom and fulfillment, starting from the inside out. Working hard and staying busy will only get you so far. To truly become happy, content, and who we are meant to be, we have to move beyond physical capacities and begin to reflect from within. We have to change our thoughts and our mindset into our most powerful assets, transforming you to take inspired action so you can become a better version of yourself and have the life of your dreams.
You are stronger than you believe. You have greater powers than you know.
Welcome to the Go Reflect Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Heather J. Crider, and this is the place where we provide 60-second brain-based reflection strategies for your success in all key areas of your life so you can connect with yourself and have the life of your dreams and become who you were meant to be. My guest with me today is Mary Clare Wojcik. Mary Clare is a mindfulness and emotional intelligence consultant, spiritual coach, and author with more than 25 years of experience. Throughout her career, she's taught and coached people in personal and spiritual development. She's passionate about helping people better know themselves, find inner peace, and live the life they were born to live. And that's why we've connected. Mary Clare is the author of Awakened Faith, and she is also a dear fellow Search Inside Yourself certified teacher. So Mary Clare, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather. I'm happy to be here.
I was so excited. I know we've been on quite a journey together over the past year with Search Inside Yourself and going through that program. And I think that's a great place to start. Can you just talk a little bit about what led you to Search Inside Yourself and why you felt that that was important to use as a tool for you to impact others?
Sure. Well, Search Inside Yourself is something that I found January of 2019. And doing mindfulness-based coaching and facilitation was something that I had told a number of my clients, my coaching clients, that they should look into if they were looking to do contemplative work in a business setting. And nobody took me up on it. And so I decided that I was going to look into it myself. And so I put it on my personal goals. And the very next day, I met a Search Inside Yourself instructor, facilitator. He was leading a mindfulness segment in a leadership class I was attending. And I asked him, and the story goes, over a year and a half later, here I am. Just kind of followed my path, and I'm excited to be able to offer the work that I have been doing with clients more in a business setting, in a secular way.
Isn't that amazing? It's another testimony of putting it out there, and boom, a day later, you're connected as reinforcement once again. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Yeah, truly flow and alignment there. It's a story I tell in all of my Search Inside Yourself classes, because it helps people understand the power of writing it down and talking about it with people, and things just start to happen.
Oh, and be careful, be ready, because
Right.
once you start doing that, things just start clicking and coming into your life. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
beautiful. So and we'll talk a little bit more about your background, but from the Search Inside Yourself perspective, you just said something I want to pick up on, of being able to help people in the business setting really understand mindfulness and incorporating that in that daily life. Can you talk to that a little bit of why you think that's important? And from your perspective, being in a corporate background, of the out of alignment and why that's a thing.
Right. I think, well, we all show up in our lives with our challenges, right? There's things that we have with our families. There's things that we have with our outside life. But when we go to a job, we are sitting in the middle of what's going on there. In the business setting, there's a lot of demands. There's a lot of responsibilities. You're impacting a number of people, whether it's a team member or leaders or customers, and how you approach that work can really determine how effective you are or not. And really being able to show up as our best selves is important. And I think mindfulness gives us the tools that enable us to show up not just well for ourselves, but for everyone around us, our family, our friends, our colleagues, the leaders, the customers that we serve. It's really important to be able to be in alignment with that.
Yeah. Do you think people compartmentalize from this business professional life and then other life? I hear so much real life. I have to go back to real life, and depending upon what perspective, that may look different. So in your experience, how much does that really impact people?
I think it impacts people a lot. I think that it is true that people do. They show up at work as a person they think they're supposed to be, as a person they think is going to be accepted there, and the person that fits into that. And what happens is then they show up inauthentic, and they wonder why they're not, moving in the direction they want to go. But if you're not showing up as your authentic self, it's really hard. I myself, had a moment where I realized, well, this is the work I really love. And maybe it really wasn't totally aligned with the job that I was doing. But to coach other people, I really had to follow my own heart. So I would say that personally I've experienced and I've seen it with a lot of other people.
Mm, that's fantastic. So that's a really, really important point, being authentic, not just with your family, but when you're doing a job and we have these masks that we wear for whatever reason, maybe ego's involved or protection, or there's a million reasons, and we can talk about that on a different level. But it's really important to be connected to yourself. And wouldn't you say that's like the first step? People have a really hard time understanding what that is, and clearly that's what Search Inside Yourself, why it's designed in the name that it is. But my question out of that, though, is, since you went through it on your personal journey as well, it's hard and it's really challenging to start asking those questions. So what is that starting point? If you're someone who's struggling at work and you feel that you're just disconnected and you don't feel like you're you in situations, where do you even start?
Well, I think one is the awareness, right? And I think that's where we start in Search Inside Yourself, is that mindfulness piece, and then having self-awareness about how we're really feeling about things. Are you feeling activated by certain things that are going on? Are you getting feedback from other people that your work isn't really, what it should be, or are you just frustrated? And when you start having that inner reflection and then kind of trace it back to, am I really showing up? Am I aligning with my own values? And am I doing things that I'm passionate about? You'll find that there's probably on some level a disconnect. And then the real work starts with, what do we do about that? And where do we go? And do we allow ourselves to make the shifts that are going to allow us to really line up with who we really are as our inner self?
Yeah. And that doesn't mean making a radical change of a
Well,
job or a
it
business,
can,
but
it can,
yeah.
but it doesn't have to. You're right.
Yeah. So for you, though, can you talk about your journey a little bit? Because you were a corporate leader for quite some time. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've been in and out of the corporate world, sort of like you. When I listen to your podcast and I hear about your journey, I've been in the corporate world, and then I went out and tried some entrepreneurial things, and then came back a couple of times and worked with some really outstanding corporations. I think what I was really doing was trying to find myself and figure out where I fit. And um, interesting enough, where I land is not something that I had insight to 20 years ago. But I had those warning signs. I had a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, wasn't able to manage it. And I had sort of this empty feeling. And I think you have that empty feeling, that's a warning sign that you need to really pay attention to, that something's really off. And there's a lot of people out there who are trained to help figure out really what that is. So, but for me, 20 years ago, I had that empty feeling, and really went to find somebody who could help me kind of find my way back to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I found mindfulness. That's where I found meditation, because the work that I started doing 20 years ago was really founded in that, finding that inner peace, finding really that greater awareness of myself, and really understanding what was emotionally going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, just realizing, wow, I feel like I'm supposed to write a book, and I feel like I'm supposed to help people. I was informally helping a lot of people for a long time, and then was sort of called out on it that I needed to formalize what I was doing and make it a business. And so it's just trusting along the way. We don't have the roadmap, but along the way, just really listening to myself and that inner guidance, and going where it's calling me.
Mm, it's so beautiful that you were able to see those signs. A lot of people don't, and they don't realize why they're frustrated and spinning their wheels. And so not only did you explore and see them, but you made some changes and shifts because of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned your book. Let's go ahead and talk about that then. And
Sure.
I have a copy here, Awakened Faith. So part of that journey for you was this alignment of, I need to do this. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. The book, actually, the first chapter of the book was written before the rest of the book, and became sort of the putty that the rest of the book came out of.
Mhm.
I in 2001 had a dream. In March of 2001, I had a dream, and I'm not going to tell what the dream is. If you want to, you can read the book and figure out what it was. But I had a dream, and I realized that it was an intuitive dream, and I didn't really understand how I could know something before it happened. And this was I was pregnant with my second daughter, and just started to realize, wow, I have some gifts there that I should really explore. That, along with the emptiness and feeling like, I'm not really feeling like the life I'm living is what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So found the teacher that I'm talking about and started doing the work. And the book is really about the work that she and I did together. It's it's my story, but it's also a lot of people's story. I just was very vulnerable and allowed myself to share things that I wouldn't normally share, because I wanted other people to know that it's okay, that there's no judgment, that we end up in situations, and you, by bringing things out, you can heal them. And the rest of the book is all about tools to help you, find your inner self, heal the things that block you, look at the things that might have caused you pain in the past, and how do we forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm. Well, good for you for listening, because again, it's one of those, and obviously some things come to us in such a clear picture. And even though it's that clear, sometimes we still continue to ignore it. So this clearly was loud enough for you that you felt compelled to go through the journey and then write the book.
Right. I think if anybody reads even the first chapter, they'll go, "Oh wow, that was a pretty big sign." If you want, I can talk about the statue too.
Sure. Yes.
So in the book, the teacher found this piece of firewood, actually in a wood pile, and it looks very much like the pieta. Except this is not Mother Mary. It's actually, if you look very close, you can see up close that it's actually Jesus. So there's another very big sign here. And this was something that I actually purchased from her when she was downsizing. And it was the inspiration for a lot of the book. The idea behind the pieta is that Michelangelo, who created the marble version that's now in the Vatican, believed that he took a raw piece of marble, that the statue already existed in this raw piece of marble, and all he had to do was chip away at the marble and hew away at this to find the statue. And I think that that's really what we're all doing, is taking, this raw material that is who we are and kind of chipping away through self-awareness and self-management and finding and listening to our heart to find who we really are authentically.
That's beautiful. And thank you for bringing that up. I was telling you before we started this, I got to see that statue live about a year ago. And you cannot deny the presence and the beauty of it, and the way that you just paralleled who we are as individuals. Once you see it with your own eyes, even if you're not an art fan, or even if you don't believe in the connection, you can't deny the presence of that. So thanks for bringing that up. I still look at those pictures often because it was just one of those experiences that really are indescribable. And that, just again, to point out that what you were just referencing with that wood, that's what you used as the cover of your book. So clearly that's an inspiration for you and continues to be, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's a theme throughout the book that I draw on, to provide tools to people to help them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If there is one piece of advice, because what keeps coming up for me in talking about this is, we all have stress in our life. It doesn't matter what position you're in. If you're, if you're a parent, if you're not a parent, if you have your own business in a corporation, it doesn't matter. And especially right now, we are experiencing abnormal amounts of stress and change and growth, and forced sometimes growth, financial hardship, you name it. People are dealing with things that are abnormal. So my question inside of there is, sometimes people just don't know where to start, what to do. And going through the motions and the same habits are what people get used to. I mean, that muscle memory, good or bad, it's really hard to break. So what do you recommend? What's that first step?
Well, I really start often with a meditation practice with people, because all of our answers lie in the stillness. If we can get, as calm as that surface of the lake that's like a mirror, we can see answers. Things start to materialize. You can certainly get a coach or a guide to help you, but if you can get yourself to that calm place, you will find yourself out of like the deepest ditches and the weirdest places, because you will have this greater awareness that happens. And clarity. When we're that calm, we see things that when we're agitated or anxious, we don't. And we find that we're able to handle things in different ways, and show up differently for people in our lives. I feel like inner peace really is the answer. It might be cliche, but you're not going to have peace in your relationships. You're not going to have peace on our earth if we can't find it within ourselves. So I come back to it too. I'm kind of weird maybe to bring in a football analogy, but Vince Lombardi would, always went back to the basics. Gentlemen, this is a football. And the idea behind this work is it's all about the basics. If we can stick with something like meditation and go back to the basics and not allow ourselves to get moved from that, you can move some pretty incredible things.
I love that you said that. I always try to use sports analogies, and Vince Lombardi is one of my favorites. So thanks for bringing that
I
up.
know.
But you're right. It does sound cliche. And what's interesting is, and I feel like a broken record, especially people who know me and my friends, once you experience the Search Inside Yourself workshop, it'll make more sense. But it's the little daily habits. And most people think, and you could answer this way better than I can, but most people think when they think about meditation, what do they think about, right? A bald guy sitting on top of a mountain for 6 straight hours. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be that. And we
No,
know, in especially current neuroscience, that just little bite-sized pieces can make a significant
no,
difference.
for sure. And the stories that you will hear about the frazzled mother who's on an airplane, whose child is screaming, and how she had built that muscle. She had found that calm and she was able to access that in that moment. It's when we build that muscle and we're able to access it in these moments. And then you'll start to hear people tell you the stories of how they were able to come through the side of some very difficult things because they built that muscle and had those tools available and remember to use them,
Yeah.
even when life was really throwing them a curveball.
Yeah. So if someone hasn't meditated before, and meditation is just a form of mindfulness, because since you brought that up of just really going back to that place of stillness, what do you suggest for somebody to dip their toe in that mindful or the meditation practice? What are some ways people can do that if they're not used to it?
Well, if we think about anxiety and we think about peace, the very first thing that I learned, and I didn't even know I was meditating, I was just breathing, was just, breathing in peace, like visualizing myself breathing in peace and breathing out the anxiety and just breathing in peace and breathing out the anxiety. And it's something that you can do in the moment and it's something that you can do longer term. But just that visualization and the act of doing that breathing will calm you down. So it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just even if you start there, I'm not necessarily a fan of the apps that are out there.
Mhm.
I prefer to do a practice like this where I'm just relying on myself and just using a tool like that.
Mhm. That's a really great point, because there are a lot of apps out now that are really becoming popular to help. And if it helps get a starting point, I think that's a good thing. But what you just said is really important, is the answers and intuition are already here. Part of that stillness is being able to access it.
Mhm.
But if we can have just a moment of being anchored to a word. So, like you just said, if you're in a stressful moment, what can you train yourself to say in that moment? So, again, you don't have to rely on an app or rely on someone else to be able to take you to a different state.
Yeah.
Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I would say, and not that there's anything wrong with the apps. There are a lot of good ones out there,
Hmm.
but I prefer people to be in the moment and have the tool right there in front of them when they need it.
Yeah.
So by doing that, a simple breathing exercise, you have it, and you don't have to rely on something outside of yourself, like you were saying, Heather.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Even though my son, he's now 12, he's addicted to the Calm app to go to sleep at night. And it's fine, and I'm happy, and I'm very happy that my kids are incorporating this. But that's what I'm really trying to instill, is no matter where you're at, if you're at school, which they're not at school right now, they're here, but you know what I mean. If you're in a stressful situation, if you're taking a test, or if you're dealing with a friend or a teacher or whatever, you have this skill. You
Mhm.
just need to be able to tap into it when you need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, let's talk a little bit more about intuition, because you're a very intuitive person. And so we've talked, we keep kind of going around this theme of this stillness and being able to tap into that. Would you say that people get too caught, and we can talk from the neuroscience perspective about it, but get too caught thinking that they dismiss, that they ignore that intuition and kind of have this, inner battle type of dialogue. Can you talk to that a little bit and why that's such a scary place for people to really listen and follow that intuition?
Well, I think if we look at it from the neuroscience perspective, our brain in the spiritual world we'll call it the ego, but our amygdala from a neuroscience perspective is trying very hard to protect us, and it will protect us even from ourselves. You know, we're made up, we're complex beings, we're not just a body. Even to try and talk about what an emotion is, it's very esoteric, isn't it? Like you trying to explain it to people. So, understanding that our bodies are trying to protect us. And so it's not maybe going to trust something that comes from it feels like it's coming from outside. Uh, Intuition is something I think we all have to varying degrees. A lot of people have it and they don't trust it. But once you find it and there's something that happens when you do have this calmness within you, that you just have some knowing about things. And if you can trust that knowing and go that direction, it's amazing the things that will happen in your life, the books that will fall off a shelf, the people that show up in front of you, the opportunities that you didn't know existed. It's just crazy. No, did I answer your question? Maybe not. Okay.
No, you're 100% correct, because it's hard to put in words. It's different for everybody, but again, the more we tap in and the more that we're calm and still, and we're able just to take moments to listen to ourselves, then we can make decisions. And you're right, we can have this internal fight with ourselves because we can get too much in that thinking brain. Our amygdala is there totally to protect us and keep us safe. And it also blocks that creativity. And so when these foreign things come in, it doesn't know what to do.
Right.
It doesn't store that either.
Right. There's from a spiritual perspective, I think we often talk about ourselves in energy terms. Someone lights up a room, they're charismatic, there's an aura about them, there's an energy about them. We talk about energy and yet we dismiss energy. When we're talking about intuition, it's really all about energy. From a spiritual perspective, when we're anxious or tired and our amygdala is activated, our energy body has this thing that it does, that it releases like an ink, and the ink it kind of clouds your field, so we will feel cloudy. And that's the same thing a squid will do when it's trying to protect itself. The squid will release an ink and it's in the water, and then he can escape. Well, our amygdala, our energy body, ego, will do that same thing, trying to protect us. And then we're like, where did our clarity go? Where did our understanding go? I'm having an off day. Well, this is what anxiety and fear does to us, and how we can unwind it with mindfulness and meditation. And then you do have the clarity that there are things around you that, I can trust and I can rely on, and I can go that direction. And pretty amazing things come out of it.
I love that. That's a great analogy to be able to look at energy. And thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of times people look at energy as just some woo-woo word. But like you said, we all recognize it. And you can see, I think that's probably one of the greatest examples, when this charismatic or bigger than life personality shows up to a situation, or on the other side of the fence, someone that really is in a violent, angry, or just upset. You can feel that too. So I really like the perspective of, we think energy is woo-woo, but yet we recognize it all the time.
Right. We live in it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then being able to recognize where you're at. So the way I would kind of chunk that down is your presence and being aware of your own state and really what's going on with you. And then it's, it's a snowball effect then of how we're showing up for others and then what our interaction, but being able to discern between our awareness and someone else's. But I really like that perspective and analogy, because I think a lot of times people aren't as aware of what's going on with them. And then they're even more frustrated when situations don't go the way they thought they
Right.
should.
Right. And the great thing about all of this is that what I described in a spiritual way is easily described from a neuroscience perspective. I mean, neuroscience can tell you exactly why we're intuitive, the different connections that happen in our physical body that'll enable us to have that, which for someone who's like likes the mystical side of things, I'm like, oh, don't make it too sciencey, but
Don't pinpoint it too much.
exactly. But they are proving that it exists, and they are able to explain why, the different connections between our brain and our gut, the different things that happen, the neural connections in our heart. There's a lot that goes in our heart center that is neural related, that enables us to have these different experiences.
Mhm. No, that's beautifully said. So, in kind of thinking about that, let's switch gears, because I'm curious, outside of your book, is there any one book that you could recommend for someone? And if so, what and why?
Well, I recommend a lot of books to people, but based on their own, where they are in their experience. Um,
Has there been one that's really been impactful for you above others?
well, it's a spiritual book. I can go neuroscience, or I can go spiritual.
It's your answer.
I can show you this one. It's this I started reading 20 years ago. It's called Love Without Conditions: Reflections of the Christ Mind, and it's about the Christ consciousness. So really a different approach, that not a Christian approach necessarily. It's similar, though. It's really talks about the fact that we all embody this energy, this power, this ability, this, to create and become. And there's just the most amazing lessons in this. It's all dog-eared and written in, and there's pages folded in. That's been a really amazing tool for me.
What's the name of it again?
It's called Love Without Conditions: Reflection of the Christ Mind, and the author is Paul Farini.
Okay.
From a neuroscience perspective, I love anything by Joe Dispenza.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza wrote a number of books. The one that Becoming Supernatural is the one that I work with a lot with people, to help them understand that a lot of what we experience is belief-based. Mm-hmm. And if we can unravel and understand our beliefs, we can change how we show up and become more than we think we were yesterday. We have the ability to move and do things, and like you're talking about, really live the life of your dreams.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just a belief that's holding us back.
Because what you think really does matter.
Right. What you think you become.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So here's another question. You can answer as however you want. Mm-hmm. A 60-second strategy that you would recommend for someone. You'd get to decide the scenario, but what would be a 60-second strategy that can help somebody maybe overcome anxiety or those stressful moments, or
a 60-second for them?
Mm-hmm.
I would say my recommendation would be, one, get outside, get grounded, be in nature. We tend to connect better with what's going on around us if we're out in nature. And then I would recommend doing some of the breathing exercises and really get to that point of stillness. The idea is to get to that point of stillness and believe that you can. Believe that you have the ability to do that. I think what holds me back even some days is the ability to go, wow, I'm going to be on a podcast. I'm nervous. Can I get to that point of stillness so I show up and offer good information for somebody? If I don't believe that I can, uh, I probably wouldn't be here. But nature, getting grounded, doing the breathing exercises, those are go-tos for anybody. Hopefully that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that because that's huge. And to your point of really not just being grounded, but taking the time to think through. And this is a whole process of your own awareness. And again, this is a much bigger picture, but just the little things. And it does start with what we believe. And if you see, I'm not going to be good, I can't do this, it's not going to work, then you've lost the battle already because that's where you're started to head and that's where your
Right.
belief is.
Right.
I really appreciate that perspective.
Do we have time for me to tell a little story? Can I tell the story?
Yeah, of
So
course.
we're in Search Inside Yourself, and we're doing this deep inner work as part of the program, right?
Yeah.
And I shared this story with you and the pod that we were working with from the Midwest. But as I'm doing this work, I realized that I had some anxiety around public speaking. And it was a belief that I wasn't sure that I could do it. And as I traced it back, I'm like, well, why is this here right now? Like, why did this come up? And remember that when I was in the second grade, I had I did a piano recital, and my mother put this mum in my hair, like she pulled my hair back and put this mum in it. And I go and I'm on stage in the school playing the piano, and everybody's laughing at me. And I didn't know why anybody was laughing at me. And it wasn't until we got all the way home that she told me, honey, the flower petals were falling out of your hair. But as a second grader, I didn't understand the difference between I'm performing and somebody's laughing at me. So it took me really going back and understanding where my belief came from to be able to go, that's not even real anymore. That's just something your mind is telling you. It just remembers this story and doesn't want you to end up in that situation again. But clearing that out really helped me get to a place where, I can show up and be my best self in front of an organization facilitating or showing up on a podcast, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that, first of all. And I know you've done a lot of work of being able to be honest because everybody can relate, right? We all have our own stories. Number one, either false or real, it doesn't matter. There's stories
Right.
that come up in our head. And you're so right when you think about putting yourself out there. Sometimes you may not be able to trace and you forget about a root situation. And it could be
Exactly.
a tiny little thing, it
Right.
could be a big story, it doesn't matter. And it really does show that once you have a thought that becomes a belief and then a feeling, then it's this domino effect. And
Right.
I always talk about this. We have filing cabinets in our brain. So that story for you was that original file. You can pull it out and rewrite it.
Right. Right.
You can
Exactly.
reprogram that
Mhm.
file. So now you have a new belief and
Right.
feeling attached to it.
Absolutely. And it does take work to really trace those lines back to really where they originated, but it can be very freeing. And the thing is too, also with mindfulness, the idea of being curious and kind to yourself, that's a story that, honestly, it's funny. It was funny in the moment, but nobody else lived it the way I did.
Right.
So, really being curious enough to go back and say, this is it's a crazy little thing, but I was a second grader. And now as an adult, it's time to like put that one to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's you have the power, and that's exactly why you brought that story up. You have the power now to be able to look at that from a different lens.
Exactly.
And to give some empathy to that little girl, because that is really scary when you don't know people are laughing at you. Of course, they're going to think they're laughing at you.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
So
And
now yeah.
it sounds like a I Love Lucy episode, like
Yeah.
flower petals, yeah. So,
And I could imagine, I could just picture myself watching, and I would think it's cute. I would be like, "Oh, look at that little girl," but you don't realize what you're feeling in that moment. And so
right,
yeah, sometimes we carry these things with us and sometimes we don't. And it's, even if you hadn't traced back to that exact story, because let's be honest, sometimes we just forget. But
right, right,
even if you hadn't traced it, you still have the power to look at an outcome that you desire and then make a choice about how you're
oh,
going to go into that belief.
right, right. There's lots of ways to get to that point where you can heal that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I think everybody can relate to, I probably have done 10 things embarrassing this week yet that I don't even remember, that at the time I was humiliated or whatever. But I mean, we're human, but we also have feelings. Sometimes they're our beliefs, maybe they're false about what the story really is, but it doesn't matter because those are ours and we are the ones living it, but we also
Right,
have to look at the different lens.
right, right.
So what's next for Mary Clare? So you have, like we keep talking about, you've also completed the Search Inside Yourself program and have that certification, but I know you're also exploring being able to do more trainings, and I think that you're really headed to bringing some elements of diversity also. But what's in store for Mary Clare? Where can we find more of Mary Clare?
Well, I think my goal really is inner peace and peace on earth. I know, and again, that sounds trite, but there's a lot of opportunity with mindfulness as it relates to different things, including diversity. I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but we are looking at, I am looking at mindfulness and emotional intelligence as it relates to diversity and inclusion efforts. I and I love the Search Inside Yourself program just the way it is. So I will be looking for opportunities to bring that to organizations as well. And I do have a spiritual practice that I run out of my home, and I continue to see people. And now moving more into a consultant role, have more time to work with people, and coming up with some very fun programs for people to explore in that way as well.
That's awesome. So if someone is kind of dipping their toe into wanting to explain what that perfect scenario would be, why someone would want to reach out to you for help in doing that.
Mhm. Um, you're asking how they reach out to me, or how you can, someone can go, my website is pretty simple, but you can go to my website. It's my name, maryclarewojcik.com, and you'll find more information about the book. Actually, the book is also available on Amazon. um, but you'll also get an understanding of the types of services that I offer. And if you're interested, I do complimentary sessions just to see if it's a fit. I can do a Zoom meeting. I can, if they're local, I can, find a way to meet with them in person. But Zoom meetings or phone calls, a lot of this work can be done remotely.
Mhm.
And so complimentary session just to see if, do we have a relationship that is, where you feel like you can trust, that you can open up, that we can uh, get to some, dig in some and see where we go. But it's very fun work. For those people who are interested in it, it's it's really fun.
So what is a example session look like and potential result?
Oh, well, um, everybody's a little different. So I have a coaching program, and where I do individual sessions for people, and I'm moving to subscription based, where I'll be adding this bigger community piece with different healers and spiritual teachers as well. But so it's different for everybody, but typically it's an intuitive guidance reading, and that can come in many forms. It could be just us having a talk with spirit guides, just as we are, and bringing that information in. Or there's a number of other modalities that I offer. I'll come to it from that perspective, or there's a lot of healing work that can happen in different ways, as with EFT tapping, for example, or remote energy work. There's a number of different modalities that I work with, and try to pick something that fits with somebody else's beliefs. Because if someone's coming at me and they're Christian and they want that approach, we're going to take a different approach than I would with somebody who is maybe Buddhist or deeply spiritual in a different way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get an idea so people can reach out to you.
Yeah. I do a couple of things that are really unique. I do Ascended Master soul level energy work, and you've actually experienced that one, and that's done remotely, and that's where I work with high level beings like Jesus to do healing and help people understand what's going on in their body. I also do trance mediumship, where I can embody a guide and have the guide talk through me, which is a very interesting and kind of out there thing. But it's been beautiful experiences where it brings people to tears. Or just really, understanding the power of prayer. It can be different for everybody.
Yeah. So people can go to your website and learn a little bit more, obviously, connect with you, and get a copy of your book as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Mary Clare, I so very much appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Heather, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
Okay, that wraps it up for another episode of Go Reflect Yourself. Remember, you are extraordinary and you can become who you were meant to be. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Go Reflect Yourself. Please rate and review this episode, and if something moved you, please feel free to share. For more inspired action or to stay in touch, head on over to goreflectyourself.com or heatherjcrider.com. You can also take the growth mindset quiz and learn where your current growth mindset lies. Stay in touch on all social media at Heather J. Crider. Until next time, this is your host, Heather Crider, and I am challenging you to go reflect yourself so you can discover and become who you are meant to be.